Hi, you're with Tassus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the treatment of Jews in Europe following the end of World War One and at about the time of the Wall Street crash in 1929. So that 10 years, 1919 to 1929. And this is, of course, three and a half years or so before the National Socialist Workers' Party came to power in Germany. So again, well before that. But I came across a few Jewish chroniclers that talked about their perception, at least, of the Jewish experience in Europe in that time. And they've chronicled or listed what they see as anti-Jewish behaviours by the Gentiles, which they universally assert has no cause, no reason, and is purely hatred, irrational hatred of Jews, without there being any cause or anything at all, just pure irrational hatred. That's it. Now that seems a little bit of a stretch, but let's have a look at this because it illustrates a few things that the perception is, tied to myth and legend of the past and not necessarily tied to a reality of the day. Similarly, the logic applied and the perceptions of these Jewish chroniclers as to how Jews or the Jewish diaspora across Europe was treated is in complete and total lockstep with the propaganda we see today about how if any white people in the West have a problem with third world peasants coming into the West, then they are just engaging in pointless, irrational, baseless hatred for no reason. Must be racism, and the people who do it therefore must be evil. So we see that same thing going on in the 1920s, and these chroniclers were, or some of them anyway, were really making these lists up before the Nazi period in Germany, and not just in Germany but elsewhere. Could have been Hungary or Austria or around the place, Poland and so on. So it's quite a number of different people united by being part of the Jewish diaspora, but not necessarily in the same country at exactly the same time. So I suppose if you took an average of it all, you'd probably get some picture as to the attitudes. Now, the idea that they were, the Jewish diaspora was the persecuted one by the Gentiles, is it not the reverse? Why do you only hire other Jewish people, only marry Jewish people? Those sorts of things. Surely that's an indication that you also are being, racist, or what are you going to call it, towards the Gentiles? Isn't that sort of the the goys and so it's rather one way and one side. It's the assumption that one side of the discussion has the moral superiority and therefore they cannot be wrong is certainly comes across in these things. But let's have a quick sort of history lesson now. The Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 was not completely, but to a large extent, was seen very much as a Jewish gig, not simply because Leon Trotsky or Liev Schreiber was a key player in it, but and he is and looks very Jewish. But more than that, the sympathisers all around Europe with the Bolshevik Revolution. The Jewish diaspora was very, very sort of sympathetic and conceptually, at least, quite supportive of this Bolshevik, certainly the ideology that everyone's equal. Now, it was seen by a lot of Jews as something that would really rewrite or change the entire relationship between the Jewish diaspora and the rest of the population of the world, let alone Europe. And that the view was that in a society where we're all equal and there's no religion and there's only the state, and equal outcomes and this sort of thing, that on that basis, Jews could never be persecuted again, because the Catholic religion, which was seen as a key component of anti-Semitism, that would be gone, and everyone would be equal. All assets would be owned by everybody, and you just have this equal sort of socialist utopia. And now the Jews, even in the middle of that, they believe themselves, though, to be the ideological torch holders of any new society. So they, while at the same time they were thinking, well, we can get rid of the things in society that were instrumental or pivotal, as they would see it, in leading to our persecution. We can get rid of that, but we will be the ideological torch holders in this new paradise, this nirvana, and that will make us the elite class in any new society that has. So that's very much part of the overall thing, the perception that we'll no longer be persecuted and will be the elites. So that was very much part of the thinking. Now, in 1919, I should add just quickly that Karl Marx believed that the communist revolution would occur in the most industrialized societies. So it was a bit of a surprise to sort of the serious and intense Marxists that the revolution first occurred in Russia, given that Russia was primarily an agrarian economy, not an industrial economy. So that was sort of a bit of a surprise. But similarly, it wasn't anything that people agreed to. It was a brutal, murderous revolution that forced communism on the people. Not that the catch cry of everyone's equal didn't seduce the illiterate. It did, but the reality was vastly different once the murder squads and the secret police got to work. So this was the perception was by the real Marxist activists and the communist activists that revolution would occur most likely in places like Britain and Germany. In Germany, given there was so much hardship there, they figured, well, it's an industrial society, a lot of hardship. People have lost confidence in the body politic. So this place is ripe for revolution. And it was called the Spartacist uprising in Germany, and it was led by. If you went to central casting, said send me some Marxist Jewish activists, they would send you the people that did the Spartacist uprising. So we've got a lesbian Jewish school teacher. Talk about central casting, Jesus, who Rosa Luxemburg, who even today is touted as some fucking lesbian Marxist saint, and Karl Liebknecht, also a Jewish guy. That's his photograph in the thumbnail of this video. And if you look at all the leading heavies in that Spartacist uprising, or maybe not all, but certainly nearly all of them, they were all Jewish. A lot of lesbians and homosexuals. The classic. Many of them were academics, the same sort of people that are the activist class today, and so they were the ones that were wanting to push Germany into communist revolution. They made a decent go of it, actually, given the confusion in Germany at the time. There was a few days where it was touch and go. It could have gone in really any direction if the people had sort of followed along with it. But anyway, it didn't work out, and both Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht were it would appear with hindsight, they were taken back and shot and murdered, whereas they should have been brought, I believe, to a trial in a proper court of law. But anyway, so the uprising was put down, but it was seen by Germans and by onlookers as very much a Jewish gig. And again, that same sort of thing, the lesbians, the homosexuals, the academics, and so on. So that was seen as it. Now, we're in Germany following the new government, which was the constitution was written up in the German town of Weimar, so it was called the Weimar Republic. But it had some difficulties there. That any government had to have a 53% majority, and all this sort of stuff. And and other requirements for absolute majorities, and the way the states and the regions of Germany were divided and given various sort of levels and forms of self-government. Bear in mind, Germany had been a monarchy with an aristocracy, and that sort of, a lot of that was gone. The emperor had gone; he was in exile in Holland, and so there was a new form of government, new type of government. The communists and so on did rather well. Again, going this, everyone's going to be equal and that sort of stuff. Now, there weren't a lot of Jews in Germany overall. There was somewhere around 400,000, give or take. So a population of 70 plus, approaching 80 million. Then that's not a big sort of part of the overall population. But nearly all there's a lot of little revolutions or attempts at it all around the place. I mean, Germany was in chaos for probably a good 4 years, really, after the end of World War I, with various attempts to overthrow either local governments, regional governments, even taking over certain cities. And it was always the communists that were doing it. And there was always at the apex, there was always this bunch of Jewish activists. So the German perception, not a mistaken perception or an inaccurate perception, was that it was virtually synonymous, Bolshevik, communist revolution, Jewish, very, very sizable Jewish presence in the activism and in the revolutionary acts or the attempts at revolution and overthrowing various local, regional, or in the Spartacus case, federal governments. So that perception was not inaccurate. Now, coming back to the Jewish chroniclers, they certainly were detailed. They would sort of go to things like, say, a beach club, or somewhere on the North Sea or the Baltic Sea. They'd look at, say, like a vacation resort or something like, things along those lines, and they would find places that would say no Jews allowed, and they would go, there you go, see, damn fucking anti-Semites. Now again, this was 5 years or so before Hitler was in government, so and in an area where the Nazis had a very small presence in politically. There were certain areas of Germany where they did very well, and certain areas where they didn't do so well. Now, these are in areas where there's the communists aren't doing very well. So it's still very much a sort of a middle-class German gig without communist or Nazi sympathies or nothing obvious. And they would have these things there. So they would guarantee to Germans that, well, there won't be any Jews there. Now, why was that? The Jewish chroniclers say, well, there you go. That's it, anti-Semitism. I mean, hey, what else? How else can you look at it? Now, but why would anybody do that? Because there's many Jews have money. I mean, they're not all broke or anything. So why would you turn away some of your wealthiest potential customers? That doesn't make any sense. And this was continued even after the Depression started in Germany, where a business like that would have been scrambling for anyone who had a buck that could go there. So nor was it upmarket to the point where it was like an absolute elite club where members only, and you've got to have a German lineage back to Frederick the Great or something. It wasn't that. It was just an ordinary resort. So they would be looking at these things. It could be restaurants. It could be vacation resorts or spas or anything like that. And there was actually, certainly if the chroniclers are accurate, there was a large number of these places that didn't accept, or it was a selling point. They would sell it to, hey, come here to our resort or our restaurant or whatever, or a hotel or anything like that. Come here because we guarantee you there's no Jews allowed. Now, why was that a selling point? Why would anybody give a shit one way or another? What's the difference here? Why is that even put forward? Now the chroniclers say, well, there you go. It's a pure anti-Semitism. No reason for it. I don't accept that. It's a commercial business. If I run a commercial business, the behaviour of the patrons aside, if I'm running a commercial business, I'm happy with anyone who can pay the bills, and presuming they don't break the law or trash the joint or something like that. But for some reason that was they made a selling point out of it. Now I don't accept that straight anti-Semitism. I just don't buy that. There's something else going on there. Was the behaviour of Jews so different that it would turn off other patrons? The amount of places and the sort of places that did that would suggest there's something in that the Gentiles believed that the behaviour of the Jewish patrons was such that it was somehow off-putting. I mean, how would they know they were Jewish? I don't know. It would be difficult to tell, wouldn't it? But anyway, that's what the chroniclers are doing now. The experience of chroniclers across Europe, parts of Poland, for example, they've got the Jewish ghetto in Warsaw. It doesn't look like a ghetto. It looks rather well off, actually, in say the late 1930s. But they've got there's a wall separating the Jewish quarter from the rest of the city, and there are police at the at checkpoints that are checking people's papers and that sort of stuff. And there's also, again, this idea of businesses, not simply in Warsaw, but elsewhere. Again, holiday vacation resorts on the Baltic Sea, that sort of stuff. That again have this thing of a selling point that the Jews aren't allowed. But from a commercial point of view, I don't get that. But anyway, that's it. So the so-called anti-Semitism was quite widespread, and there has to be more to it than just people who are anti-Semitic. Now, there's some semantics that the chroniclers go into, and I've heard this actually from Jewish activists who I know personally, and where they say, well, all the Gentiles hate us because they think we killed Jesus. And well, that's a bit fucking simplistic. So that assumes everyone's pious and devout and knows their biblical history, which very few do actually. So that I don't buy that. They assume the Catholic Church has had a real thing against Jews. There is some merit in that argument, by the way, going back over time. Some very arbitrary stuff, like if somebody says they gave a Jewish person some sort of Holy Communion or something, something like that, or something to do with the sacraments, then the church could arbitrarily sort of acquire that person from a Jewish family, and the Jewish family had really had to go to exceptional legal, through legal court action and so on to be able to reverse that. So there were elements. I do get that would sort of somehow manifest as not being able to go to a holiday resort. Then that I don't sort of agree to. Now, just on the thing, I think there's more to it than anti-Semitism. There's people I've met who I wouldn't call anti-Semitic in the slightest, but they're very wary of hiring Jews, this sort of thing. And just sort of going back, and I mentioned this in other videos, when I was a young guy, I don't know, maybe 22 or something, I was stuck in the human resource personnel, as they called it back in the day, the human resource department, and there was I had to do some interviews for some job. I can't remember what it was. I mean, it was somewhat senior, but certainly more senior than I was at the time. And the guy who I thought was the guy the better qualified of all the applicants, his name was I don't know, Rosen or something like that, and I didn't even think of his Jewishness. I thought it didn't even cross my mind. And the boss came in, or whoever the big decision maker was, and so who do we get? Who do I see for the final interview? I said, well, the best one's him, but I'd give him and him a look as well. Well, I'm not going to talk to him. Oh, why not? I thought he was pretty good. Oh no, don't hire Jewish guys. No, They as soon as one gets in, they hire all their mates, and they've got all these religious requirements, and they won't do this, won't do that. They're just too difficult. It's not worth it. And they're constantly trying to get you to change your behaviour to suit them. And he came out with this litany of things that suggested he'd come across it before, and had decided it wasn't worth the aggravation. I didn't really know what he was talking about. And I thought, well, if he's the best qualified candidate, who cares? If he's going to create a fuss and bother and a drama and not do his job, then you can fire him later. But anyhow, I was overruled, and I still didn't really understand what the guy was talking about. But I shrugged my shoulders. And he's the boss. Yeah. He knows best. I mean, he was a guy, twice my age, so I assumed he had experience and knowledge and understanding that I didn't. So I let it go. That was it. I didn't see it as anti-Semitic at all. He seemed to be very practical about it. It wasn't, hey, I hate that guy because he's Jewish. It was here are the practical reasons for it, which he explained to me carefully. Now, I kind of wrote it off as like really he just didn't like the guy or something like that, or the guy was too good and he felt threatened, or some other reason. So I just sort of ignored it, but stored in the back of my mind. Come fast forward a number of years, and I'm in a company where I'm away overseas, and the CEO hires a director of HR while I'm away, and I wonder whether that was done actually just so I couldn't be involved in it. But there was a very Jewish lady who turned out to be extremely activist in the Jewish diaspora and so on, and as soon as she's in the chair, then all the people that are getting hired, like all of them, are Jewish. There's no Gentiles getting hired at all. And I've noticed that she's even encouraging some of the Gentiles to leave the company and this sort of thing. And I think, well, why would you be doing that? And replacing them with Jewish people, and so I sort of know. And then I remembered what this guy had told me. Don't hire any Jewish people because they'll just hire all other Jewish people. And before you know it, there's no Gentiles left. And so I remember that. So when I saw this lady doing it, I said, hey, you're employed to hire qualified people. So you're not employed to hire all your buddies. And they had quite a network. I looked into it, and they had quite a network of sort of Jewish contacts through Jewish schools and through rabbis. It's a real network. And okay, I got a job going, an engineer or a technical salesperson or something. Do you know anybody? Oh yeah, I know, so and so Goldberg. He's available. That sort of thing. And so they had this really organized structure for making sure that they were getting Jewish people into good jobs and influential jobs and these sorts of things. So I told her, no, you can't do that. This isn't a plaything for the Jewish diaspora just to hire who you want to hire. So I had to deal with the usual stuff. You Hitler. I had to go through. No, don't give me that. You're employed you're being paid by a company to hire people to do certain jobs, not to play activist. And she sort of, her comeback was, I think she accepted that okay, you're not anti-Semitic, you've got nothing against Jewish people, you're just arguing the middle ground here. And I think she accepted that, not happily perhaps, because she was an activist, quite a radical one in my view, but she took so she thought she'd try and convert me, saying, look, we've been oppressed for centuries, we've been downtrodden, and therefore we should be allowed to do this because it's compensation for all the crap we've had to endure over the centuries previous. Now, again, the very same logic that's applied to the slavery thing. They're entitled to compensation because of what we assert happened. So I'm not buying that for a minute. And I had no real knowledge of Jewish activism and globalization at the time. So I was a bit of a sort of a, I even slightly naive, I guess, but I was, no, I'm not having that. No. You're not going to do this. You are not going to just hire Jewish people. This is not a vehicle. This is not a plaything for you to uniquely privilege the Jewish diaspora. You must understand that. Now, you've had your warning, I'll have to get someone else to do this job if you persist with doing this activism, especially as you're doing it under the table in secret. That's just not acceptable. Now she went to the CEO and like I'm the EVP. Okay, so she went to the CEO and tried to sort of put it that she was being unfairly victimized, not by somebody with malice, but just someone who just didn't know. Doesn't he understand that Jewish people have been victims for centuries? That type of stuff. And there was sort of some sympathy because the CEO had hired her, and so there was some sympathy. So he had to go at sort of changing. Why don't I just leave her to go about her business, and it'll all work out in the end. If the people can do the job, why are you worrying? And why do you? No, it's not that. And he knew where I was coming from. Not that all the people she hired were useless, by the way. Like some of them could do the. One of them I thought was actually very good, and that's fine. But it comes back that unless she has asked permission and it's written into an employment contract or into a company policy that the board of directors, unless that's the case that it's written or agreed by all parties that she can go off and do this activism while being paid by a Gentile company, by the way, then that's a different matter. But that she does it in secret, in darkness, sort of, and tries to hide it from us, then that's even some of the people that she hired had anglicized names like Miller, but they were really Muller and German or German Jewish and this sort of thing. So they had or had changed their names. There's one guy she hired, his name was Barry or something. His surname was Barry, something like that, but his real name was Boris Stein or something like that, Boris Berg, whatever, and he just shortened it to be called Barry. And so even the people who had Anglo type names, they were Jewish as well. And I thought she'd hired like 6 Jewish. I thought she'd hired 6 Jewish and three Anglos, 3 Gentiles. In fact, all 9 were Jewish, which I got to the bottom of a little bit later. So I said, no, you can't have 9 jobs in a row and every single one of them a Jewish person's getting hired, whereas Jewish people represent less than 2% of the population in this country. I mean, give me a break. So anyway, she did back off, but with some reluctance and some annoyance. So that guy's position of if you hire the Jews, they'll do this. So I looked at the complaints made in these, or complaints, listings of issues that the chroniclers made, asserting that it was anti-Semitism. But I just don't buy that it could be. I don't accept that any commercial business will turn away a paying customer. And why would they think? It's one thing to turn away a paying customer. It's quite another thing to say there's a selling point. You only get more business if you tell your patrons that you won't allow Jewish people to come. I don't know what it is that Jewish people, maybe someone will tell me, what were these Jewish, because some of them must have, if they had money, they must have been reasonably sophisticated people. What were they doing that was different in their behavior? And it's behavioral. I don't believe it was because they were Jewish. What was different about their behavior that would put off Gentile patrons, and whatever it was so in your face that these businesses could openly say that to their Gentile patrons, we don't allow Jews here. It can't all have been Jews wearing the full regalia or wailing wool regalia. It just can't have been that. They must have been just ordinary people in their suits and their ties and their spats and so on. It must have been that people that you wouldn't know were Jewish, but yet it wasn't. They were using this as a selling point, and I think there was something in. So when I look at all these claims, I think it's proof, certainly by in my cognizance, not of anti-Semitism. Well, some of it must have been not of anti-Semitism necessarily, but a view that Jewish behaviour was so different that it somehow should be separated from Gentile having a vacation and or having a dinner or something like that. And I don't understand that, but I note its existence. Now, coming to when the Nazis came to power, these chroniclers covered that, of course, as you can imagine. But the first sort of 6 months even of the Nazi government, they moved very quickly. And what did they do? They removed Jews from having positions in academia, and not simply in psychology or sociology, but even in other areas like engineering and science and architecture and things that you wouldn't think would matter if somebody was Jewish or not. And I'll come back to the thing there. They wanted Jews removed from being journalists, high school teachers and the like, or all teaching, and also Jewish authors and Jewish movie makers, and anyone involved in reading the news and that sort of stuff. Now, why was that? They went specifically for those things. They really didn't do much outside. If you had a shop on the corner, they didn't really care. But that they went for that quickly. Now, if you read what was going on in Europe at the time, in Germany or elsewhere for that matter, in Europe, there was a lot of radical, revolutionary type plays. There was a lot of books promoting pedophilia and homosexuality and these sorts of things. Saying that the family units, so yesterday, why do you have religion when the Marxist paradise is only around the corner? So there's a lot of this sort of stuff. And if you look at the authors of those books and that literature, they're nearly all Jewish. I mean, it's hard to find anyone that isn't Jewish writing that sort of stuff. The same with the doing of radical plays that were denouncing gentile society, obliquely a lot of it, but nonetheless. And we're advocating again for revolution, and also a dissolute society, absent of families, absent of religion, and so on. Again, Jews very much at the forefront there. A lot of Marxist and communist propaganda being pushed through the schools and the education system. Again, not exclusively Jews, but gee whiz, certainly very much up there. If you look at that big book burning by the Nazis, it's nearly all Jewish authors. There was much made that it was just any author that wasn't a Nazi, that's bullshit. So clearly the Weimar period, it'd been a time of revolutionary activism that the state, because governments were rising and falling every 5 minutes, the state had felt unable to oppose, and it had kind of been left. So we don't care about what they're doing. Politics is a domain of the wealthy and the powerful landowners and so on. And so when the Nazis came to power, they wanted to move on all of that. So again, the Jewish journalists who are writing the sort of propaganda and activist nonsense that we see today in the media, it's really the same. In fact, if you pulled some of the Jewish columns, Jewish journalist columns from 1929, and then put them into a newspaper today, the New York Times, there'd be barely any difference. You change the place names and so on, but the sentiment of the evil gentile diaspora has to be crushed and brought down, and then a paradise will ensue. It's the same stuff. I mean, it's almost no different. And they're like a fucking 100 years apart. So this is what the Nazis did. Now, this is chronicled as being uniquely anti-Jewish, and for no reason other than hatred of Jews. I don't buy that either. The people who were getting kicked out were mostly activists, not all. There were some people who were in engineering or science, Einstein, engineering or science or architecture or so on in universities. They were also kicked out. Now, they were kicked out just because they were Jewish. But in some of those cases, they had an entire, all their staff were Jewish, and they would have one Gentile as a token. But so this was again something the Nazis rankled with the Nazis. Why would you have an entire department Jewish when the population of Jews in Germany is less than 0.5% of the total? And they would quite reasonably question that. And say, well, if you're going to run a little Jewish cabal here, then you haven't got a job. No, I don't agree with that. I think they should have sat down and worked something out. Because some of these people, these engineers or architects, some of these people were very gifted and doing very good work. I mean, why Why get rid of people that are that bright and that conscientious and hardworking? That doesn't make any sense. So I think the Nazis were quite silly in that regard. I think a deal should have been cut with those people. Why squander people who have this huge talent? That's beyond me as well. But I just wanted to give an overview there of all that, and just so it becomes sort of has a wider perspective than this. That there's more to this than just a straight out anti-Semitism. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. And I say that being someone who never understood the Jewish issue. I went to school with people called Berg. I never knew. I never thought about them being Jewish. Never knew that it was relevant in any way. And so. And I've hired Jewish people, been hired by them, worked alongside them, and a great admirer of some of the the towering intellects that I've come across amongst the Jewish diaspora. But coming back to this period here, I don't accept it as all anti-Semitism. I think there are other issues at work here, and I think it feeds back into this maniacal Jewish desire to bring about social revolution within the gentile diaspora, and I think it comes back to that. And they can't let it go. You're being with Tacitus today, your Pushback Channel. Thank you for listening.